The factory floor roared with the clatter of metal, the hiss of steam, and the low thrum of generators working overtime. Sparks flew from a welding station in the far corner, casting flickering shadows against the grimy walls. The air hung thick with the scent of hot oil, gasoline, and steel. At the center of it all stood a dead engine, enormous, blackened with soot, and utterly silent. Around it, a semicircle of engineers, technicians, and floor managers stood in tense silence. Most had grease smeared on their sleeves and fatigue in their eyes. Tools lay abandoned on carts. Everyone was out of ideas. "This prototype is done," muttered Ellis, the lead systems engineer, pulling off his gloves. "The compression ratio is too volatile. It was a flawed design from the start." Rourke, the factory's hard-edged owner, towered over them all with a sharp gaze and a jaw that never unclenched. "That, flawed design, is supposed to revolutionize the combustion cycle. You all pitched it, and now not one of you can get it running." His voice cut through the noise, flat and furious. No one answered. One technician coughed and shifted uncomfortably. Rourke took a deep breath, his eyes narrowing on the engine like it had personally insulted him. 3 months, hundreds of hours, $1 million in parts. And all I get is a lump of scrap metal. From behind the safety line near the back of the garage, a voice piped up. "Maybe I could take a look." Heads turned. Everyone looked toward the brake area, where Lena Turner stood casually with a wrench in her hand, oil on her cheek, and a quiet confidence in her stance. She was short, 19, with tightly tied back hair and a stare that didn't flinch when Rourke's gaze fell on her. "You," Rourke said, his tone sharp. "You're Joe Turner's kid." "I'm Lena," she said, stepping forward. "And yeah, I'm his daughter. You've got no engineering degree. No experience on prototypes. You even qualified to be on this floor." "Not officially," Lena shrugged, "but Dad taught me everything he knew. Every night in the garage, every weekend under a hood. He used to say engines are like people, you listen to them first before you try to fix them." Rourke's jaw tightened. The mention of Joe Turner softened something in his expression, but only for a heartbeat. "This engine isn't a rusted-out pickup. It's a next-gen variable pressure combustion hybrid with a smart core and custom hardware. It's already killed 3 circuit boards and nearly took out a test bench." "Then maybe the problem isn't the engine," Lena said. "Maybe it's the way you're treating it." The silence that followed was almost electric. One of the junior techs snorted under his breath. Another elbowed him into silence. Rourke took a step forward. "All right, Turner, you want a shot, I'll give you one, but here's the deal. You touch it, and you own the result. You break it worse, or you mess up my prototype again, you're banned from this floor. Permanently." The challenge hung in the air like a heavy wrench. Lena didn't flinch. She walked past the safety line, past the wall of doubting engineers, and stopped right in front of the dead engine. "Deal," she said, "but when I get it running, I want my dad's toolbox back." That made Rourke blink. Her father's old, beat-up box had been gathering dust in storage ever since he passed, half shrine, half forgotten. He stared at her for a long moment, then gave a tight nod. "Fair enough. Impress me." She knelt beside the engine, laid her hand on the chassis, and smiled slightly. "Let's see what you're trying to say," she whispered. And just like that, the garage's attention shifted, from the engine, from the $1 million failure, to the girl who might just resurrect it. Lena crouched beside the massive engine like a surgeon approaching the operating table, calm, precise, and already visualizing the work ahead. She didn't rush. She ran her fingers along the surface of the housing, feeling for heat pockets and warping. Her eyes scanned the manifold, traced the tangled network of hoses, wires, and hand-fabricated mods. It was a beast, too complex, overdesigned, and barely holding together. But to her, it was already speaking. Behind her, the engineers watched in a strange mix of curiosity and skepticism. Some crossed their arms, silently judging. Others leaned in, unable to hide their intrigue. She opened her father's leather tool roll, scuffed, sun-faded, and lovingly worn. Every wrench was labeled in her dad's shaky hand. She selected a small, curved spanner and twisted off a bolted valve cover with surprising ease. Then she reached into the intake chamber and paused. "Someone flipped the VTI gate," she said aloud, not even looking back. "You've got reverse air pressure cycling in the wrong direction. That's why your pistons are knocking, they're choking themselves at ignition." "Impossible," Ellis muttered from the crowd. "That was checked twice during fabrication." Lena pulled out a flashlight and shone it inside the chamber. Then whoever checked it didn't understand how it's meant to flow. You've all been treating it like a traditional system. But it's not. It's reactive. It adjusts based on minor pressure fluctuations. Dad was working on this before he passed. He told me about it. She turned one of the manifold nodes 45 degrees, clicked it into a new alignment, and tapped it with her wrench to lock it in. The sound echoed across the garage. Several of the engineers frowned and scribbled notes, checking against their schematics. Next, she pried open the casing on the control module. Wires had been spliced and respliced. She traced them carefully, pinching one between her fingers. The control board isn't faulty, she said. It's confused. You've got 3 signal loops feeding it, each slightly out of sync. That's why your sensor data's inconsistent. It's basically arguing with itself. Rourke stepped forward, watching her intently now. So what's the fix? She smiled slightly. It needs a translator. From her pocket, she pulled out a small, worn chip, one she and her father had custom programmed 2 years ago for a different project. She slid it into the auxiliary port. You just had that on you. Someone whispered. She didn't answer. Instead, she went to the back of the engine and adjusted the timing valve, subtly, confidently. She cracked open the compression chamber and bled a little pressure, then listened as the whir of internal gears shifted pitch. Finally, she adjusted the fuel mixture by hand, reprogrammed the boot sequence line by line on the outdated terminal, and stood back. All right, she said, try it now. The crowd held its breath. Rourke moved to the console, glanced at her one last time, then turned the key. For a second, just a second, nothing happened. Then the engine gave a low rumble. It didn't cough. It didn't struggle. It growled awake like some great metal creature stirred from slumber. The rumble evened out into a smooth, rhythmic purr, the exhaust system syncing with the airflow perfectly. The pistons moved in harmony. The overhead lights vibrated slightly from the raw, focused power of it. Someone let out an audible gasp. A young technician who'd been skeptical the whole time dropped his wrench with a clatter. Lena crossed her arms, watching it idle. That's how it's supposed to sound. The silence that followed wasn't just surprise, it was awe. Rourke stared at her, then at the engine, then back at her again. He didn't say anything at first. He didn't have to. She had just done what none of his seasoned, highly paid engineers could do. She didn't patch the problem. She understood it, and for the first time in years, Rourke realized he might be looking at someone who could finish what Joe Turner started.